I need to grow my portfolio. I'm not happy with a 9-10% return. I probably need to target a 15%. So then we would go on to a balanced or a growth portfolio. It's very similar, balanced and growth, except the allocation is 35%. In a growth, it's a 55%. Debt again would be 30%. And my real estate portfolio or a private equity portfolio would go up to 15%. If I'm a very aggressive risk taker, right, I feel that, alright, I'm making an education corpus for my child, or I wish to do some retirement planning in which I'm very convinced about the equity market. I feel that on a 15-year basis, I'll get a CAGR of 15% or an 18% due to market outperformance. I have the best of fund managers. I'm willing to take that kind of risk. I'm not going to look at my portfolio for the next 2 to 3 years because I'm an equity player. I'm in the market. I'm invested. I've seen the fund manager, his track record. I've invested and I'm going to track my record only on an annual basis. That would be a very aggressive risk taker. So he would be 80% in equity and probably 20% into real estate, right? Very few of our clients are very aggressive. And specifically the ones who understand the risk. So they're also very knowledgeable. They're educated about these financial products. They understand what they're getting into, be it equity markets, be it structured product. Accordingly, it's a relationship, which you have with your financial planner. You need to both be on the same page. And over a period of time, a lot of our clients, it's very interesting. So they start off in a conservative portfolio. Risk averse, again, a lot of people might not go for because it's just barely beating inflation. It's just capital protection. I do not even want returns, that kind of an attitude. But a lot of our clients, in fact, might like to be invested in conservative portfolios to start off with. Then the returns generated, if you're making a 9-10%, the returns generated, you can siphon off and start taking baby steps towards equity investing. Right? You can take that 5 rupee of 100 rupee and put that in an equity mutual fund, see how it works out for the next 1 or 2 years. So that is how a lot of investors approach. Right? So they will siphon off some returns and put it into a fund and monitor that for the next 1 year or 6 months to understand whether they can do that. So a conservative person can also take an exposure, but it's a very baby step to equity investing. Some basic tools to evaluate mutual funds. I'll not stress too much on this because it's highly technical, but these are the tools which usually portfolios use, which are used by mutual fund houses. These are all again very readily available at valleyresearchonline.com. One would be the standard deviation. So this would be the deviation of your fund's returns over the fund's average returns in a period of time. So higher the deviation, you ideally want to be in a fund which has a lower standard deviation. That is, you're closer to its average returns over a period of time. Then would be the Sharpe ratio. Sharpe ratio would be actually your risk-adjusted return, what I was telling you, that how much of return are you getting with that 1 unit of risk that you've taken. In finance parlance, it's very important to understand. We usually talk about risk-adjusted return. That we do not go to a client and say, all right, you're making a 12%, 50%. What is my risk-adjusted return? For that 12 or 15% that I'm making, what is the risk that I'm taking, right? Beta. Beta again would be the amount of volatility that you can stomach. Is this fund very volatile? It will have a very high beta. So when the markets are going up, that fund's outperformance will be very high. You'll make a lot of money. But if the situation changes and if the markets are coming down, similarly the fund would fall accordingly. So you need to understand that the beta is high and invest accordingly. R square is something that we leave out for the time being. It's alpha would be the fund manager's outperformance. Say fund manager XYZ, what is his outperformance vis-a-vis the market? Right? And how do I judge his fund's performance with the market performance? So if I'm saying fund ABC has given a 20% outperformance, that would be the fund manager's alpha. Now this is a very interesting slide that we're coming to. So a lot of us would like to know, and this is an interesting conversation that we've had in Delhi market so far, wherever we've gone and met a lot of our clients, acquired relationships. There's this eternal war between, or a tussle in choices when you come to real assets versus financial assets. By real assets, I would mean real estate, I would mean investing in physical assets, into bullion. So why a lot of our clients will say that traditionally our grandfathers, we've had land, we just buy land and we keep it. That's our financial asset. That would be 100% of my portfolio. Why don't I do that? Why do I need to get into financial assets at all? So it's a real assets versus financial assets. We'll just come down to that. Main challenges to investing: to beat inflation and maintain the real purchasing power. I've already stressed on that. That your 10,000 rupees today would actually need to be at a 1,24,161 after 40 years to have that same purchasing power that you have of a 10,000 rupees today. To balance between risks and returns and to ensure liquidity when needed. This is the most important challenges of investing: to ensure liquidity when needed and to balance between your risk and return. How do you do that? When I talk about real assets and its pros and cons, the strength of a real asset is it can help protect investors against inflationary spiral, and supply cannot be adjusted unlike a monetary base. Now it's a very, very technical term. I'll just explain this. In a real estate, in a housing market, the supply is what it is, right? And the supply can be increased or decreased only by construction. It cannot be increased or decreased by an RBI intervention or by money coming into the system, right? So in the financial system, money is much, much more liquid, which can work well, which can work even adversely, right? Because at the press of a button, a lot of liquidity can be absorbed and taken out of the system and can come into the system. When you're into real estate, that supply, it's just there. So you're not actually witnessing the volatility in supply in that market, knowing that volatility will only come through construction, not otherwise. This is again a little illusionary, because right now in Delhi market, it's very important to understand that there's a flux of supply. There's an oversupply, especially in residential. Similarly with a lot of other markets. In fact, Bangalore, the same thing happened to them in 2012, Bangalore market. There's been an oversupply because all the PE funds, all the FDIs rushed to Bangalore because the IT was in a boom. After that, IT slumped, and now there's an oversupply in the market, right? So the only thing is we do not realize that as an investor, because there's no ticker. Real estate does not have a daily ticker, so we do not witness or feel that volatility. In a financial investment, we feel that volatility because it comes in your statement. You know your exact market value. In a real estate, it's a broker-driven information. Whatever you get to hear from market, there is no ticker or an exchange which monitors these prices.
Even in the newspapers.
Can I tell you, Sanjita, once you are done with this, go over this slide again. Okay? Because this is very, very important for everybody to see. Thanks.
This is a very clear cause.
Investors can have physical possession over the asset. The touch and feel. As human beings, we cannot, I completely agree, we cannot be so dispassionate. When you feel that you have this house, you're able to go over, look at it, feel that you put it up on rent. How many of us over here would just like to ask this question? Do we actually calculate the rental yield that we get?
Yeah.
Are we aware of the rental yield that we are making year on year in Delhi markets or in Hyderabad or in Bangalore?
2% and 3%.
It will be less than that.
No, it will be much less.
Sometimes less.
Most of the time it's less. Sometimes less.
I am glad. Absolutely. There will be price increases. But do we monitor how much? So, coming to that slide, what is the price increases that we have witnessed? See, if we have to take historical data. Right? Investors do not perceive any volatility in real estate as there are no daily tickers. But is that a fact? It's a strength, I agree, because then actually you stay invested. Which may or may not work for you in the long run. It may actually, because if you have a good view on real estate and your economy is doing well, then it actually might generate good amount of capital gain over a period of time. But you stay invested because you're not able to look at the volatility, which is good, which is a strength. It's good for the investor. In an equity market, I might still have that conviction. I might be very convinced about the markets, I might be very convinced about corporate India, about the economic reforms, that the markets will do well in the 3 years. But what happens? On one single day, if the ticker goes down 10%, am I able to digest that? I might actually exit that fund, and that will be a very grave because then I'm not acting against my convictions. So that is actually a weakness of a financial asset, that you have so much of transparency that it prompts us to push that button right there and then. So it's a strength in a real asset that investors do not perceive any volatility in real estate as there are no daily tickers. Usually a law of scarcity applies, thus protecting value over long periods, provided due prudence has been applied at the time of making the investment. So if there's a law of scarcity, if we feel that, supply is not there in the market, I'm getting into it at the right time, I'm making money, so that is the strength of the real estate or a physical product. Gold. A lot of gold. How does gold prices increase? How has the gold prices increased in the last couple of years? Anybody? Gold, absolutely. So, gold, for an economist, a gold would be defined as a product, as a commodity, which has a positive price elasticity. Gold by itself has no value, zero value, nothing. But why gold has a value is because we see the value in gold. So the minute I start buying gold, you would feel that, oh, it's a great asset, let me also buy. She's buying. She will also buy. Third person would see gold is being bought. It's a great thing to have. He'll also start buying. So it's a positive price elasticity. You see the value in gold because we see the value in gold. Tomorrow if China starts buying gold, rest of the world will again come back on curve in terms of buying gold because the price of the gold will rally. Right? So this is a law of scarcity that applies in holding real estate. A lot of times it may not be true. For example, there might be oversupply in the market, construction has not happened, there's been all sorts of constructions in uninhabitable area, people have gone and invested in those uninhabitable area, which are completely all investment, speculation driven, and you're essentially sitting on a huge supply which is a bubble, waiting for it to deflate. Now it might not deflate or just burst as a bubble would, because that will be very disastrous for the entire financial system, for the entire economy, because the banks have lent to real estate developers. But what might happen, which we will not realize because we don't have that daily ticker, is that it might have actually a stagnant growth for the next 7 years without us realizing it. So this is another point which we need to make, right? Which we need to understand, that it might be stagnant. A deflation, gradual, very unnoticed, you might go into a 5 years of slump.
No, the other thing is, can I add on here, she's not saying it will go into slump. It is quite possible you got it for an X price. For you it may be accelerating. So it again depends as a very individual to individual. What place will be most inhabitable, but I could have bought it at the correct time, at the correct price, and it could be rather giving me returns much higher than what you are thinking about.
Quite right.
So the question is again, please ladies, it comes back to individuals. It is quite possible my gold bullion may not give me that much return. What my real estate may give it to me. So what she said in the beginning is, you need to evaluate that way. Because things keep changing quite often, but what she's saying is, keep these things at the back of your mind when you are making investments.
Totally.
Is that the only
The
way?
most important thing would be this. Never, like she rightly said, we will never put all eggs in the same basket. As a recommendation, it's never, all or in, all or nothing, or all in, I'm 100% into real estate. No. It should be very, very diversified. And again, based on this model that you could look at, whether you're risk averse, conservative, aggressive, because there are risks. I'll just come down to now the cons of real
That's
estate.
all again to bother.